Welcome to our tutorial about what happens to sound when it starts bouncing around your studio. We talked about harmonics and overtones in our previous tutorials, and in this tutorial, we're going to cover a few more behaviors that are important to understand for shaping both your acoustics, your recording quality, and your mix. Instruments, amps, and voices make sound waves that travel outward in all directions. Some comes right into your ears or the mic. That's called direct sound. The rest of this hits the walls, the ceiling, the floor, the furnishings. Some of those surfaces absorb the sound, some goes through the surface, and some is reflected back around the room. The first thing I'm going to talk about is echo. Because sound waves take time to travel, remember sound travels at 1,130 feet per second, 344 meters per second. The reflected sound reaches your ears after the direct sound. Now that might seem pretty fast, a little over a foot per millisecond, but our ears are very sensitive. In fact, if the sound is delayed 50 milliseconds or more, we will hear an echo. Some concert halls give a single echo. Smaller rooms will give a short, rapid succession of echoes called flutter echoes. Flutter echoes happen when sound bounces between two parallel walls. Now let's talk about reverberation, reverb. Sound waves don't just reflect once, they keep going and eventually decay in the corners of your studio. This persistence of sound in a room after the original tone is called reverberation. For example, reverb is the sound you hear when you shout quickly in a huge empty room like a school gymnasium. Reverb is different than echo. It's a continuous fade out or decay of the same sound, rather than multiple, discrete repetitions of the sound. Too much reverb in a room makes recordings sound distant and muddy, washed out. That's why pop music recordings are usually done in a fairly dead room. In classical music, however, reverb is an important part of the sound, so that's why it's recorded live. When sound waves reflect off of a bumpy or convex surface, let's say your foam mattress nailed to the wall of your studio, they spread out, and this is called diffusion. What it does is weaken sound reflections. Generally, in a very live or reverberant room, we'll hear a lot more of the reverb on the recording than we do just listening in the room. That's because our ears are made in a way that lets us focus on the direct sound. But in the recording, the reverb's coming straight out at you up front in the speakers, so we're not able to make that spatial separation that we do when we're listening live. Echoes and reverb in your studio lead to leakage. By now, why leakage happens probably seems obvious to you. Sound travels to the nearest mic and to other mics used by other instruments. Leakage is also called bleed or spill. Minimizing leakage when you're recording more than one instrument is really important. Let's say you're recording a guitar and drums. You turn on the drum mics, the drums sound tight. But when you turn on the guitar mic, the drums sound muddy. Well, that's because the guitar mic is picking up drum leakage and possibly canceling out some through phase interference or phase shift. You can tame your studio echoes, reverb, and leakage with low-cost acoustical treatments, musician placement, and recording techniques. We cover these in the studio setup section of this course. This concludes our tutorial about how sound behaves in your studio.